Hey, Laura here, and after watching this video you will know how to make a bikini top with fabric details that look like cute flower petals. For this project I'm using about half a yard or 45 centimeters of stretchy fabric and stretch linen, quarter-inch wide elastic, two strap hooks like this, and basic sewing supplies like thread, scissors, pins, and sewing machine, and of course the sewing pattern. Just like in the last video, I'll be using the dummy pattern. I will leave the link to this pattern and everything else I'm using in this video right here and in the comments below in case you want to check it out. After printing and assembling the pattern, I choose the small size and trace it onto thin interfacing fabric or pattern paper to use it as my template. Then I cut 2 pieces of fabric and 4 pieces of linen. To make a pocket for the removable pads, take 2 of the linen pieces and fold the top corners down about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Then I sew a seam using a small zigzag stitch about 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter from the edge. Then cut off the excess fabric so they look like this. I take the fabric pieces and layer 1 full linen piece on the back. Then I place the shorter linen pieces on top of it and pin everything together to hold it in place. To know where to start and stop sewing the elastic on each side of the top, I mark 2 inches up from the bottom and 1.5 inches down from the top. Then I set my sewing machine to a zigzag stitch with a length of 4 and a width of 4 and sew the elastic onto each side of the top using the marks I just made as a guide for where to start and stop. And once the elastic is sewn, it will look like this. Then along the bottom edge of the pieces, I sew a straight stitch to hold all the fabric layers in place. Next, let's add the top straps that will tie behind the neck. I made these straps the same way I show in my video about my favorite method for making strong bikini straps fast. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will leave the link here and also in the comments down below with all the detailed steps. And after sewing 2 long strips of fabric using that method, I cut 2 pieces that are 35 centimeters long. Then I place each one centered on the top's upper tip and pin them in place like this. Next, I measure 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeters down and make a mark. That's where I will sew a straight stitch to attach the strap like this. Now, to finish the edges and hide the elastic, I fold the sides inward and sew a zigzag stitch using the same settings I used to attach the elastic. I do this on both sides of the top. Once the edges are sewn, they should look like this. To finish the straps, you can either fold the ends and sew them, or like I did, just tie a knot at each end and trim the excess so it looks like this. Next, to make the channels for the straps under the bust, I measure 2 inches from the bottom edge and make little marks along the fabric like this. Then I fold the fabric inward so the bottom edge meets the marks and pin it in place. Using a very small zigzag stitch with a length of 1.8 and a width of 2, I sew making sure the stitching stays right along the edge of the fabric. Next, to turn this big channel into 2, I measure and mark the halfway point, which is about half an inch, and sew a second stitch down the middle. Once that's done, the pieces should look like this. And now comes the fun part, which is creating the petal effect. For this, I cut 8 squares measuring 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, which is around 4 inches, and 6 squares measuring 7 by 7 centimeters for each side of the top, which is around 2 3/4 inches. So in total I had 16 big squares and 12 smaller ones. And once all the squares were cut, I took one and folded it in half, then folded it again, kinda to make a smaller square, and rounded the corners like this. I repeated this step for all the squares. After rounding all the corners and turning the squares into more of a circle shape, it was time to arrange them on the top. I started with one of the larger circles and folded it so the edges weren't perfectly aligned. This creates a layered look with the bottom part peeking out a little more than the top. I pinned it at the top right on the strap and continued with two more of the large circles, folding them in the same way and placing them just below the first one. You can arrange the petals however you like, depending on the look you're going for. In my case, after placing the first three large circles, I added the rest of the large ones along the outer edge of the top. Then I placed the small circles next to them on the inner side. The last two were pinned right around the level of the bottom seams like this. And then I arranged the petals on the other side of the top using the first side as a guide to make sure both sides look even. Once everything was pinned in place, I used a thin needle and a thread that matched the fabric color to hand sew each petal down. After a few stitches like this, I tied a knot on the inside to keep it secure and hidden. I repeated the same step for each petal, making sure to sew only through the outer fabric layer and avoiding the lining so no stitches will show on the inside of the top. For the straps that go under the bust, you can leave them long and tie them at the back just like I showed in the previous video. But for this one, I wanted to create a different look using these small hooks. To do that, I took one of the straps and wrapped it around my body to find the length that fit best. Then I added a little extra for seam allowances. Each of my straps ended up being 55 centimeters or 21.5 inches long. On one end of each strap, I attached one of the hooks and held it in place with a pin. On the opposite end, I folded the fabric about 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeters from the edge, and this is where the hook will fasten later. I repeated this step for the second strap, and then I sew each end of the straps with a straight stitch and trim any excess fabric to keep it neat. Using a safety pin, I threaded the straps through the channels in the top. I started at the center front of one piece, so the strap comes out at the side. Then I continued through the other piece, entering from the side and coming out at the center front. This way you can fasten the top right at the front. And repeat the same steps with the second strap. It can be exactly the same way, or you can do it like I did and start from the opposite side. I felt like this made it easier to fasten at the front, but maybe that's just me. In the end, the hooks end up hidden under the petals like this. And if you know me, you probably already know I'm obsessed with finding different ways to wear one piece. So here are my 3 favorite ways to style this top. First, the classic halter. Just tie the straps behind your neck and that's it. Next, crisscross front look. Just cross the straps in the front and then tie them behind your neck for a more bolder, sexy look. And lastly, we have the tip-to-tip twist. Bring the top corners of the triangle together so they meet at the center, and then tie the straps behind your neck, giving it a totally different vibe. Let me know in the comments which of these 3 you like the most. Remember, in your hands lies the power to turn the invisible into visible. And if you haven't seen the braided version of this top, I will leave it right here for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!